people! Welcome to the Stitch People podcast. I'm Lizzie Bean, your host and the founder of Stitch People, where our goal with cross-stitching is to inspire your personal creativity, and our goal with podcasting is to help you make some new friends while you're at it. And I have to tell you, in today's episode, you are going to walk away, I think, both super inspired and maybe with, the feeling of a new friend. Darienn is a very, very cool lady, and I admire her so much. You will see very soon how multifaceted she is. We get into her love for Dungeons and Dragons, D&D. We touch on her career a little bit, which is she's a prosecuting criminal attorney, which is like, whoa. And she is able to bridge the gap between this very systematized analytical profession and her creative life in such a seamless and positive way. I am in awe of her and her extraordinary breadth and depth of talent and interests. And I just had such a fun time chatting with her. I hope you do too. I hope you have a fun time listening, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome, Darienn, to the Stitch People podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Good. Thanks for being here. So before we got started, you mentioned you went to the dog park this morning. So before we get into anything else, I have to ask you all about your pooch. What have you got?
So we have a Corgi.
Oh.
Turns 2 in a couple weeks, and he's the cutest.
He's a baby, a little baby Corgi. Yeah. I always think of Queen Elizabeth when Corgis are just inherently royal to me now. Good dogs. Oh, that's so great. What's his name?
Bailey
the Corgi. Is he very well behaved, or is he naughty?
He's naughty.
All the good puppies
are.
I have gotten very lax. We have 3 dogs, and our oldest dog, Lucy, is she's 12 now. And the older she gets, the softer I get. She's a very loyal dog. She's always underfoot. She's a shepherd, Australian shepherd. So she's got those shepherd instincts. And anytime she's around, I'm not the cleanest eater and snacker anyway. I tend to be a little bit sloppy. I just always have been a little chaotic. But I'm maybe a little less polite than usual, just to give her a few extra crumbs. Oh no, I dropped a chip. No, Lucy, you're gonna have to eat it. Poor thing.
I know.
I enable.
We're terrible. And so Bailey wasn't a pandemic dog. We got him in January before the pandemic hit.
Okay.
But then everything happened before he got a chance to go to puppy classes.
Oh, yeah.
And we got a little lax on the obedience. So then when everything opened back up and we tried to take him to obedience classes, he actually flunked out.
Oh, I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah, the trainer was like, I think that he would benefit from some private lessons first before he came back to group class. But he's gotten much better.
Oh, good.
He has much more manners now. But
that's so
he's
sweet.
A dog school flunky.
Aw. Oh, well, we've all got things where we could improve.
Yeah.
Poor buddy. He'll get better. So where are you calling from today, Darienn?
I live in sunny but very chilly Syracuse, New York.
Syracuse, New York. I sort of loosely grew up in Rochester. So there you go.
I go to Rochester for work sometimes.
Oh, great. Yeah, my mom grew up in Buffalo, and my dad's from New Jersey originally, but when I was in elementary school into middle school, my dad worked for the Eastman School of Music right in Rochester. So that's where we lived. That's kind of where I feel like I'm from. It was those formative years where you're, like I said, elementary school into middle school, and then I did high school out here when my dad moved for jobs. But I like that area. It's great. Oh, how fun. Okay, so you've got a dog. Do you have a partner? Do you have kids? Tell me a little bit about your family.
Yes. So I am married to my lovely husband, David.
Yay, David.
It's our 3-year anniversary. And
congrats.
We're actually expecting our first baby.
Congratulations. Oh, that's so exciting. Do you know when are you due?
Oh, it's still very early.
Early days.
It's like mid to late June.
Okay. So you get to, that's so nice. Okay, now I'm like envisioning you like all cozy during the winter and like getting ready to have your baby in the summer. Oh, what a fun time. Congrats. That's very, very
Thank
exciting.
you.
Time to grow the family. Oh, that'll be great. So do you come from a big family, a small family of your own?
Pretty small. Me and my brother, and my parents got divorced when I was in high school. My mom, it's a very cute story, actually married her high school sweetheart, and who's my stepdad, and so I have two step siblings as well.
Okay. Little yours, mine, and ours. That's nice.
Yeah.
So does anybody, it's safe to assume that you've got a crafty bug, at least for cross stitch. Does anyone else in your family do any crafts or any cross stitching as well?
No, absolutely
just you?
Not.
Oh, I like that. So is it a very like analytical family, very like sciencey math people?
I would say, yeah, my mom's an occupational therapist.
Okay.
She was a very good PTA mom, so she was like crafty when she had to be.
Sure.
But no, like she still says that the baby quilt she was going to make for me is in pieces in the sewing box 28 years later.
Hey, you know what? I have respect for that. She tried it, apparently did not love it. And hey, we know she knows what she's about. That's great.
Yeah.
So how did you get into cross stitching?
Funny enough, it was actually Stitch People.
Huzzah! So, we converted you. Yay!
Yes. So when I was about to get married in 2018, I had just been admitted to the bar. I'm an attorney, so I'd finished law school. I had a little bit of free time finally, and I was like, I'm going to make my husband a wedding gift. Just going to be like a nice thing to do.
That. Yeah.
And so I think I Googled like handmade wedding gifts or something, and then I came across cross stitch. So then I Googled like cross stitch wedding gifts, and I found Stitch People portraits. And so I ended up making my husband. It was us all through the years from the day we met. I had a picture from the day we met, so I had our outfits. So when we moved in, when we graduated, because I graduated from law school at the same time he graduated with his teaching degree, and then our engagement and our wedding. I'm
like getting full body chills over here. That is such a fun idea. And how special that you have a photo from the day you met. Was it, how did you meet? Was it like a date you went on where a photo would have been like maybe like normal, like let's take a selfie, or was it just by chance you had a photo of it?
It was kind of just by chance. We met at a tailgate for a few football games. So
just like a bunch of friends.
Yeah.
I love that. And you have that's so special. Oh, I love that so much. So was it a bunch of separate portraits, or did you do one of those things where it was like all in the same frame or all part of the same portrait? What was the layout of that?
All in the same frame. So it was like couple, all next to each other. And then I put our favorite quote from Parks and Rec at the top.
Can I guess what it is? Is it the I love you and I like you?
Yeah.
But it's such a great quote. That is such a great show. For those who don't know it, absolutely go watch it. Parks and Rec is so fun. And it's the love story you're rooting for. And they say that to each other. Because it's, sometimes you have one but not the other, depending on the people. I love that. Do you have that hung up in your house now?
I do.
I love it. Oh, well, that's it. I'm totally happy. Podcast over. We did it. That's
It was actually really cute too, because I had wrapped it and they were like, do you want us to give it to him in the room when he's getting ready? And I was like, no, I want to give it to him right after our first look. And so
get chills again.
First look, and I gave it to him, and so I was able to get our photographer to capture pictures of him opening it.
Oh my gosh, you have such good luck with photography. Like all your special moments. So you actually have photos of his reaction opening it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, did he cry?
He did.
Yes! That's a good man. I love a man that can cry.
He wasn't going to cry, but I totally
Yeah, right.
Cry.
You're like, okay, I'll bet you money. That's great. Oh, I love that. And how nice. I mean, I'm with you. Like when someone suggested like giving it to him without you there, like, what? Are you crazy? Like, no, that's half the fun, especially when you make something by hand and it's so meaningful and so special. Was it clear to him what all of the milestones were? Or have you labeled them with text or something?
So I didn't label them with text. What I did was I put like little icons like right above each couple. So the first one was a football, and then for when we moved in together, I put a key, and then the others were a little obvious because I did graduation gowns and our engagement. Yeah.
Right. Oh, that is so thoughtful. Oh, I love that so much. That's one of my favorite things about Stitch People is so much of how we have like driven Stitch People has just been by like input from fans and customers. And it's like, what patterns do you need next? Like, and so much of that is driven by everybody being inspired by each other because it's such a medium of like taking it and making it your own and putting your own spin on it. And like you said, like integrating, you know, a little symbol that represents the moment or the day or that I don't know that I've ever like heard that, but that's such a great idea, like a little key for moving in together. You don't always need text at the bottom that says like, our first apartment or, you know, whatever. It can just be symbolic. That's so brilliant. I love that. We should, now I'm percolating. We should come up with like a pattern book of symbols you could use at the bottom of your portraits in like to substitute text or at the top, whatever, add it to the list of ideas to do. That's so great. So, okay. So you've been cross stitching since your wedding and you said you've been married 3 years now. So have you done more portraits in between?
I have. I took a little break for a little while, just cause I didn't really like have anyone to make them for. But since then, I've done a ton for friends' weddings, friends' babies.
I love that.
Family portraits. And this year, I actually started my own small business.
Hey! And is it like cross-stitch portrait related? Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah. So do you tell me all about that? Yeah. What's it called? Where do you sell? What do you do?
Yeah. So it is Lavender Corgi Co. And...
I love it already.
Yes, I have an Etsy, and I actually get most of my business just through direct messages on Instagram.
Oh, great.
Follow me on Insta. And I do mostly Stitch People portraits, but also I do some quilting, some handmade bags. So it's like a little bit of a lot of different crafty stuff. So
do you do custom quilts or is it... or custom bags, or are those more things that you make and then sell, like when you're done, and then you have like the custom portrait offerings, or is it all kind of custom?
So I'm always open to doing custom quilted items. It's not something I do very frequently just because of how labor and time intensive it is. It isn't really cost effective to do them as much. Mm-hmm. But I've done a few for people having babies, and bags. Yeah, I can do them totally custom. I put some pre-made ones in the shop. So
cool. Awesome. Well, you just have to head on over to the Etsy shop and check it out. That's great. So you've done, in theory, many, many, many portraits since your first series. That's great. Do you have one, your personal like crowning jewel portrait aside, do you have a portrait that you've done that you would say was one of your favorites or your ultimate favorite to work on?
So I wouldn't necessarily say it was my favorite to work on, but it was my favorite when it was done is the one I actually just finished. I did a 15-person Dungeons and Dragons party.
What? That's so cool. It made me squeak. That is so... Okay, so 15... So was it to... I have so many questions. I don't know where to start. So was it... So I'm assuming it's a group of 15 friends?
So
was it a family?
No, it's a group. I connected with a woman online who makes custom dice for Dungeons and Dragons. And so we decided to do an art swap. And it is for her husband, is their game master, and it's a group of their friends, and then some of the non-playable characters that they've kind of adopted along the way. And it is it was like a sci-fi outer space themed game. So there were like some aliens in there.
I love aliens.
And different types of creatures.
That is so fun. So did you have reference photos for all of that? Okay, so you weren't just like imagining like a fun alien, like they knew specifically what the characters looked like and everything.
Yeah, she had actually previously commissioned a drawn digital portrait of
that's helpful.
the characters. So she sent me all the reference photos, and I was able to work
great.
from there.
How was that to design?
It was a real challenge. Most of the figures, I'd say, were at least relatively humanoid, even if they had blue skin or something like that. But there were two. One was like he had like knees that pointed the opposite direction of how knees usually point. And so I had to adjust all of that. And then there was also a robot character. So I did my first like robot.
Okay. Yeah, it is tricky. I don't know for listeners, with Stitch people, they're usually just, as most of us would know, I assume, just kind of the same, like you said, humanoid kind of template, a head and arms and legs and relatively human proportions, and you just sort of adjust the height. If you want to adjust the width, great. But for anyone who's attempted to do anything non-human, it's trickier sometimes than it sounds, especially when the angles, like the angles or curvature of a body or a head or shapes of clothing don't lend themselves to like a 90 or a 45 degree angle, which is what you get on Ada fabric. Did you find that you had to make like a lot of unique kind of shapes and stitches to fit things to make it look just right?
I managed to thankfully get away with mostly being okay with at least 45 degree half stitches.
Sure. Okay. That's lucky.
Things went relatively smoothly in that department. There was a lot, I would say, of more even just like satin stitch to fill in weird gaps than traditional cross stitch. But I think it came out pretty good, and she was happy with it.
And if she's happy, that's what you want, Sometimes it's easy to get after yourself, like, oh, I coulda, woulda, shoulda, but if the recipient is happy, what else can you ask for? That's so cool. So now, is that are the characters that you did for her? I have a lot of friends who play Dungeons and Dragons and have said that I would love it and I really need to do it. And I've been meaning to. Both Spencer and I would love. It just seems like something right up our alley. We love to, play around. But up to this point, I'm not super familiar. I know the mechanics of the game, like you said. There's like a game master who's kind of like the stage manager, if you will, the story person who kind of tells everybody what their options, and it's a little bit like real-time decision making, right? So are the characters that you did characters that are in a lot of versions of Dungeons and Dragons, or were they really unique to her and her husband and their kind of friend group there?
So in Dungeons and Dragons parlance, I guess, it's called homebrew.
Okay.
Which means you're not using something out of a pre-written module.
Oh, no. So it is unique.
And so they were totally, totally brand new and unique to this group.
But that is so fun. And are you a Dungeons & Dragons fan? I'm assuming, because you said you did an art swap, right?
I am. So I've been playing in a wonderful group for almost 2 years now.
Fun.
Yes. We met online during the pandemic, and we're now on our second campaign, and I actually run a game for these guys too. So if you and Spencer ever want to play,
we can hop in. I find it all very intimidating, because that's the thing. I'm like, can you just like play once, or like do you have to make it a whole thing, or like
no,
how long? How does it like? What are the mechanics of your group? You said you met online, so did you do like Zoom Dungeons and Dragons? Cool.
Yeah, so we do Zoom. There's a whole bunch of different programs online where you can put maps up and have like move your little characters around on a digital map if you aren't able to meet in person, which I think is what most people kind of envision, at least in their heads when they think of Dungeons and Dragons. It's sitting around a table with the little figurines and the terrain. And obviously most people haven't really been able to do that given the circumstances the last couple of years. So there's lots of resources to play online.
Cool.
And a lot of my Stitch People portraits have come out of Dungeons and Dragons. It's kind of a little specialty I do.
A little niche. I love that. And is that something that you've done like for your friends and the people you play with? Or is that something where like words caught on and that's a lot of what your commissions are? Or maybe both?
Both. So I've done some for my friends and my group members, and then I'm in various Dungeons and Dragons Facebook groups, kind of like the Stitch People group.
Yeah.
And everything. And so I've posted my commission information. I've gotten some commissions from there. And
that's great.
It's a little niche.
I love that. Well, and how cool that you have found a way to sort of marry two of your interests that you really like, that you're not just doing, a Stitch People portrait for someone. Not that that's not fun, but that it's fun for you to sort of continue to immerse yourself in a world that you really enjoy. Even with I would imagine, like, was it cool doing those unique characters for the really big one you did, or maybe even others where it's sort of that like custom character that they've dreamed up? Does that give you like new and interesting ideas to take back to your groups to maybe try, or how does that inspiration kind of flow through?
Yeah, it's always really interesting to see the ideas that people have for their characters. And it's so funny because when I first went into playing Dungeons and Dragons, I was like, okay, you are an adventurer. So you're a wizard, or you're a fighter, or you're something. But really, people make all sorts of crazy characters. One I did for a friend of mine was a druid character that used to be a circus performer. So I actually adapted one of the patterns from the ballet book. I flipped it on its head so it was a character in a lyra hoop.
That is such a fun idea. That's really, really cool. See, now I'm like, I could just ask you all about Dungeons and Dragons. I'm curious. Tell me about like how many like standard characters are there to draw from versus like making them your own? Does that make sense? I don't even know if that is like a question I can ask. I don't know.
Yeah. So I would say there isn't really one standard character. So kind of the way you would build a character is you pick a race and a class to start.
Okay.
So those are the very basic, and so there's just almost an infinite combinations of things that you can play. But races go for anything from human, dwarf, fairy, gnome, things like that. And then there's, I really should know this, and I am going to get totally dragged by anyone else who's also into Dungeons and Dragons, because I cannot remember how many classes there are. There's probably somewhere between 10 and 15.
Okay.
And that is kind of what you do. So you could be a barbarian, or like I said before, wizard, or a monk. And once you combine those two, that's kind of the basics of your character. But then they can be really anything you want. So let's see. I've played a fairy monk who was raised on a hippie commune, and I've played. That
sounds like fun. Sounds like something I'd be into.
Yeah, I play another character who is a tiefling, which is kind of these like devil creatures. They're usually some variation of like pink or red or purple, and they have horns and a tail. And she's based off Sally from The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, fun!
And yeah, so it really can be absolutely anything.
And you use that character and those combinations of traits, race, class, whatever, to sort of drive your decision making in like the role play kind of game that you play, right? because a like a monk character is gonna behave differently in any given situation than like a warrior would.
So when you pick those things, you then get some certain base statistics. There's actually a lot of math in D&D.
Interesting.
And so you get your you get modifiers to, you have 6 statistics that kind of affect your whole character. So it's strength, dexterity, constitution, charisma, wisdom, and intelligence.
Ooh.
You roll to develop a base number for those stats, which would give you a modifier. And then from those, there's a whole list of skills that you can have, like stealth and perception. And how you choose to allocate the roles that you get is how you would play your character, essentially.
Okay.
And then anytime you have to do something, you typically roll a D20, a 20-sided die, and that determines the outcome of how well you do that thing.
Okay. All right. Well, that is interesting. I think that's the first time that kind of math element has been explained, and that helps me understand, I guess the word would be like the parameters in which you can make your decisions, right? Where it's easy to think like, oh, okay, well, if I'm a wizard, then like, poof, the threat is gone, right? But if you have, you know, certain characteristics at certain levels, based on all those parameters, again, is kind of the word that's coming to mind, then, yeah, okay, then you know your limits, you know what you're capable of, where to kind of conserve and exert energy based on, and okay, here's actually another question I have about it. Is it the story master, you said, is the person who kind of determines what's going on in the story, right? And is that something they're just coming up with on their own, or is there a guideline for that? Are there certain stories that you play out?
So yes, to both things. You can do a pre-written module, which gives you kind of all of the parameters that you need. Or you could homebrew, and then there are still some very basic guidelines. So one thing, for example, is going back to what I was saying about rolling for a success or a failure, then there's kind of a general difficulty setting for something. So if you only had to roll, say, a 10, that's considered pretty easy. If you have to roll a 15, that's a little harder. And the DM comes up with that number in their head, depending on how hard they think this thing should be to achieve. Okay.
So that's likely to be someone who's like very familiar with the D&D world, and they kind of know what's going to work, what's appropriate, what's usual, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would say typically most people play a little before they DM, but not everybody. There's a guidebook you can buy.
Awesome.
One for players, one for dungeon masters, and even if you've never played before, that gives you pretty much everything you need.
Cool. Oh, that's so fun. That's so exciting. Like I said, we're gearing up to play. We have this one friend who lives nearby, and once we get the lay of the land, maybe we connect on that. But yeah, I mean, it just sounds so interesting, especially as like I enjoy acting, and so it's sort of just like a little small scale. Like I've got my character, we've got our story, and it's a little more. It's like a video game meets acting, but in real life, where you're playing out a story, and it is a game, but also you're not, attached to a screen, which is really refreshing. So, that's great. What is it about it that you love? What is it about it that keeps you playing?
I really just love getting together with my friends. So I met this really amazing group online, and it was all new players. And then our DM has been playing for forever, like 20 years or something. And he was like, sure, I'll teach you group of 20 something girls how to play. And so we just connected, and it's honestly really silly. Like, I feel like what you see on TV, like people who are taking it extremely seriously, it's not serious. It's silly.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, and we laugh. And so that's what I love. I just love getting together with my friends. We actually after we had played from March 2020 is when we started, and we're from all over the country.
Oh, fun.
And we met for the first time in person, all of us, in September.
Ah, that's just barely, like just 2 months ago?
Yeah.
Where did you meet?
So we went to the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair. We rented a house for the weekend.
Fun. I love a Renaissance Fair. It's been years since I've been, but I went to a few as a kid with my parents, and I really want to go. And I told my husband, you all know Spencer. I told Spencer that there's a part of me that's a little hesitant to go to a Renaissance Fair as much as I want to go, because I'm a little afraid that like I'll get really into it, and like I don't have the time. Because I think I'll want to and like do costumes and like get really into it, because I just think it, like you said, it's really silly, it's fun. Like when we're little, we play pretend. Why can't we do that as adults? Like it's just fun to do something different and be something different for fun for a minute, you know?
Yeah, we got all dressed up and it was really fun. But our one friend who lives in Pennsylvania, and that's how we decided to all meet up there, she had a season pass, so she went like every weekend.
Awesome. And
you get really into it.
It's just so fun and different, and especially, did you play Dungeons and Dragons together that trip?
We did.
Okay, good. I was going to say, at least you get, you have a fun outlet and your friend can usher you around the fair. That must have been just so cathartic to just be all in person together.
It was the best, and we've already talked about meeting up again. One of our group members lives in Colorado, so I think the next trip at some point is going to be getting a house in the mountains out there.
Oh, wow. That'll be fun. That'll be really fun. I just, my good friend of mine got married in March, and in February, she had like a girls' weekend instead of like a bachelorette party, and we did an Airbnb cabin kind of up in like northern Utah, which is quite a bit more rural than where we are near Salt Lake. And it was just so much fun. And it was just a bunch of girls, and we all kind of brought food and hung out. There was a hot tub. Like it was just fun to be away and be in, like you said, in the mountains and just kind of hang out. And a change of pace can be really good sometimes. So
yeah, I did something similar over the summer. It was one of my girlfriend's birthdays. So we rented a cabin and went out on Cuca Lake.
Oh, okay.
Actually, yeah.
Love that. Oh, I love that. Lake. I'm a lake girl. I'd take a lake over an ocean, I think, just because I grew up going to lakes, and it's... Oh, how about you? There's pressure's on.
Oh, no. Ocean forever. Yeah.
I do like the ocean. I feel better in the water of a lake. So I think that's the difference. Like I get a little ocean, like I don't know that I would say I am afraid of the ocean, but I am afraid about the things in the ocean that I don't know about and can't see. I'm afraid of the depths of the ocean, and I'm afraid of secret currents. Like just the idea of like getting swept out. I freak myself out, but I don't mind boats. I don't mind cruise ships. Like I don't mind the ocean, but I do like swimming. And so lakes, I feel a little bit safer, just like jumping in and going for it. But
I will agree there. I would say I'm not a huge lake or ocean water person. If I'm going to swim, I much prefer a pool.
Yeah.
But I think to sit on the beach, I prefer the ocean.
Oh, okay. I could get behind that. Okay, so I could pick your brain about D&D forever. I think it's fascinating, and I love to learn about what people are passionate about. But I am going to redirect slightly. Do you do any other crafts beyond cross-stitching?
I do. So I do some quilting.
Okay. Yes, you mentioned the quilting and the bags. Are the bags quilted?
They are mostly just sewn, but I have dabbled in quilting them as well.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I forgot that we kind of touched on that with the Etsy shop. That is great. Do you have this is a fun question I like to ask. Do you have any crafts like on the horizon that you've noticed that you've like maybe started following, but you haven't quite tried yourself, but you're interested to?
Yes. So I hate to bring this back to D&D.
Oh, I don't mind.
It seems like my whole life is D&D. Resin dice making is like a big thing on Instagram, and just very, very fancy dice. And I want to try it so badly.
That sounds really cool. What is it? Because I just know resin, like you kind of have a mold, you pour it in, you let it set. How do you make resin dice fancy? Like what about it makes them custom or unique?
So a lot of the pages I follow, they either do liquid cores, which I don't know how they do it, so that is not something.
So like the inside stays liquid?
Yeah.
Almost like a snow globe or something?
Yeah. It looks like a snow globe. Or like little dried flowers. I saw a lot of really cool Halloween ones with
fun.
Halloween little confetti in them and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of like the new thing on the horizon.
Very cool. I like that. Well, definitely if you do it, definitely like share a post in the community on Freestyle Friday or something of just what you've been up to, because that'd be really fun to see. I love that. So as we're nearing sort of the end of our conversation, we're at the tail end, time flies. What would you say is your definition of success? I love to ask this question.
I saw this on the list and I was like, this is the one question I hope she doesn't ask me.
We can skip it if it's too much pressure. But I think you come from such an interesting background where you clearly have such a sense of like play and adventure and imagination. And yet you said you're an attorney, right? By day?
I am.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is like very pragmatic and very literal and very, so I feel like you live in kind of, well, first of all, tell us what is your day job? What is your emphasis as an attorney?
So my emphasis is in criminal law.
Oh no, we need a whole other episode. Tell me everything.
It's actually not something I really talk about too publicly.
Okay.
I'm a prosecutor, so there's not a lot that I can really talk about. Yeah,
it's a lot on the down low.
Yeah.
Criminal prosecutor. Clearly the world is fascinated by you. Just look at podcasts and television and movies, and you live it day to day. Is it okay? So Spencer's mom was a nurse for 35 years, and anytime a medical show comes on, she just laughs and laughs and laughs because it's so not real. Is that true for you?
Yes. So I used to love Law and Order SVU in undergrad. Like, I'm one of those people who could watch it like to go to bed. Yep. I used to love watching it. I used to be the same way. My best friend still loves it. And so the last time I went to visit her, she's like, we're not really doing much. Let's throw on a few episodes of SVU. Sure. And I was like, I can't watch this.
What was it about it that made it unwatchable? Was it just like ridiculous, or was it that, because I know you have to
wrong. Like,
yeah.
And it's funny, like funnier shows that don't take it as seriously don't bother me, but because I think SVU is like so serious,
yeah,
I'm like, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. And so finally, she actually was like, we need to turn this off because you can't keep ruining it for me.
I love that. Yeah, like something like Brooklyn Nine-Nine is a cop show. It's less the prosecuting element. They're not in court a whole lot. But I would imagine that a show like that, where it's clearly not taking itself very seriously, and you're willing to give it more leniency because like they're just writing for the joke or they're just writing for the punchline, right? But yeah, in a serious show, that's tricky. I remember we watched Silicon Valley with Spencer, and Spencer's degree is in kind of computers and programming and all that. And sometimes I would pause it and be like, is that real? Like the software thing they're talking about, the programming thing. And he actually often would be like, yeah, he's like, they're kind of dumbing it down a little, but like, yeah, it's like, that's a thing, So it's nice when it lines up, but I'm sure very frustrating when it doesn't.
Well, I find that so funny, sort of the professions where the shows seem to really match and where they don't, right? Like you said, Spencer's mom is a nurse, and like most medical shows aren't really right at all. But my husband's a teacher, and when we watch shows a lot of times involving teachers in schools, he'll be like, that happened last week.
Like they nailed it.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I wonder I wonder why that is. I think maybe it's like the more specialized the profession, the harder it is to get it right, because doctors, lawyers require 8, 12, 20 more years of school sometimes to specialize the way you need to. So it's an actor or a writer who's writing the show now maybe didn't used to be a doctor, but maybe they used to be a teacher. They might have gone into education and taught middle school and then pursued their passion of writing for TV or something. So maybe there's more chance. I don't know. I'm just like brainstorming. But okay. So do you find, oh gosh, okay, we're going to go a little longer because I have so many questions now. Is, playing D&D or crafting or all this stuff, do you find you kind of need that creative outlet at the end of the day? Or do you ever have chances in your job to think creatively, or is it very systematized? I'm curious. I don't know much about it.
So I wouldn't say that it's really standardized, but it is very analytical.
Yeah.
So there isn't a ton of necessarily creativity that goes into it, which is why I really like to carve out that time in my evenings and my weekends. Like my Thursday D&D time is for me.
Yeah.
It is like something I will not miss.
Oh, I love that. I'm so glad you have that. A lot of people don't even give themselves, that, like one thing a week to look forward to. So I love that, like you time. PSA, everybody take your you time. Anyway, continue, Darienn.
No, so I mean, I definitely think that's something that I need. And I try not very successfully, just given the nature of my job, I really try not to take it home with me too often.
Sure.
So I try to leave the weekends for my cross stitching. I have a few commissions coming up, so I have tried to like really leave my weekends to do those. Nice. And then I have a couple weeknights where I play D&D. So
I love that. So when you say you try not to take it home with you, is that just sort of pure discipline of like, nope, I choose to not answer emails on the weekends, and you just like have to get in the habit of like kind of mentally switching that off and focusing? Is it just sort of like your personal boundaries, your mental boundaries?
So in my job, whether I wanted to have personal boundaries or not is not really a thing. Sometimes, I mean, just emergencies come up and I'm needed right then and there. But in terms of taking things that I can avoid home, like taking a set of written motions or taking a brief I'm working on, like if I can avoid it, I try not to do it.
Good for you. That's good. That's healthy, right? Like otherwise you're going to burn out. Like, period. That's just it. That's what happens. And I'm sure you've probably seen that a lot too. Well, okay, so now that we know a little bit more about what you do and how you do it versus this like again, it just comes across as such pure joy for this like silly adventure creative life that you have. Given all of the multiple facets of your life, what does success mean to you? How do you feel like, you're satisfied with what you're doing, or you've made it, in any given capacity? I love to hear what that is for folks.
So I think to me, success really is just having a balance.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean having it all, because I also think that that's impossible, but really not falling too much into work or too far out of work, or, just really, I think being the most successful is when I have a balance.
I like that. Because life, I mean, you hear that anecdotally, you hear it in religious beliefs and spiritual beliefs and philosophy, intellectual beliefs. Like you hear that light is because dark is, or that good is because bad is. Like there's this inherent polarity in life, right? That you can't necessarily feel life's happiness and joys if you don't have the contrast of like grief and sorrow, and it makes happies happier because of it, right? So I love that idea. It feels very pragmatic to me and very well-rounded, that I think you have such a great view of like, well, there's gonna be both. There's work and there's play, and just making sure that seesaw isn't like tipped one direction, or those scales. I guess I could use like the lawyery visual, that the scales aren't too tipped one direction, and that you're really keeping them in check. See, I think that was a great answer. Not a question to avoid at all. We'll temper that question with, what is something that made you laugh most recently?
Um, so going back to bringing Bailey to the dog park today,
Yay!
I got him a matching sweater to a sweater that I had, and we wore our sweaters to the dog park.
Oh, I love it.
And it was just so silly and so fun. So
I love that.
That made me giggle, and it made my husband roll his eyes, but I don't care.
Look, I heard a quote once when I was in like high school, and I latched onto it. It was something along the lines of like, he who can make himself laugh will never cease to be amused. And I know that sounds so silly, but I totally live my life that way. Like half the silly things that I do is just because I think it's funny and because it delights me. And I'm like, that's good enough for me. Like, I'm laughing. That's the point. Anybody else can have whatever opinion they want. You know?
Same. I definitely feel the same. I'm like, you know what? It makes me happy.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. And especially given like your line of work, I'm sure, but I think given anybody's line of anything, whatever struggles we have or whatever jobs we have, it's so important to just claim what we like because we like it. And that's enough, you know, because it makes us happy, because it makes us laugh. And to make what I really admire about you is it seems like you really make an effort to seek that stuff out and to do something, to go out of your way to do something because it makes you happier, because it makes you laugh, because that's important. And that's, you know, life is a little lackluster without it. So I think it's inspirational. I think it's admirable of you. So I appreciate the reminder, and I hope that anybody listening to this can also sort of have that takeaway. Is that okay? My last little question before we do our rapid round, is that something that's come naturally to you? Have you always kind of been that way in your life, or have you had to really make an effort to foster that you time or those things that you like, that you enjoy for yourself, make you happy?
I'd say I've always pretty much found time for the things that I've liked, but over the years I've had to find a way to do that in a healthy way. Like when I was in like middle and high school, I would stay up all night. My parents got me a laptop and I was like up all night reading and, you know, playing games online and doing stuff that high schoolers would do. But until like 4 a.m, and then you gotta get up at 6. And I was like, this isn't sustainable, right? So I think it really has not come that naturally to find the balance in it.
That's interesting. To be honest, I completely relate with that because I'm the type of person where when something really grabs my attention, I can really focus on it and do it forever. I was totally the same way, whether I was like making a gift for a friend or playing. I loved like Roller Coaster Tycoon and Sims. I'm like the builder of worlds kind of games. Or even if it was like just a school project, like I could and did often, just like you said, stay up till 4 a.m. and then school's at 7:30, like ruh-roh. So I totally relate with that idea of like doing the things comes naturally, but like making sure you're cognizant of those limits of sustainability and like integrating it into your schedule in a healthy way where you're actually sleeping and, you know, not just like deep diving and hyper focusing on things. It's sometimes hard to like reel it back, rein it in, but sounds like you found a good balance of that. And I think that's really, really cool. So without further ado, let us get into some rapid fire questions of a few of your favorite things. So we'll start easy and ease you in, Darienn. What is your favorite food? Do you have like a go-to favorite food? I'll give you this. We can do a sweet and a savory, like a favorite treat and a favorite food.
Okay. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to pick a whole category of food.
Okay, like that's great. I love that.
Greasy spoon Chinese food.
Oh, yeah.
Ultimate favorite food. My favorite sweet treat is I really love ice cream.
Oh, any particular flavor?
You know what? I like anything with like fruit in it. So like a black cherry.
I love that. I respect that. I grew up in a family where we mostly did like, you know, like the moose tracks or like the caramel peanut butter chunks, like just very rich ice creams. And Spencer comes from a fruit family. And I now really appreciate like a vanilla ice cream with fresh strawberries or something because of that influence. And I can appreciate those flavors. Tell me, do you have a favorite smell?
Yeah, I really like Christmas trees.
Oh, yes. That's a really good one. Do you have a favorite vacation destination that you've traveled to?
My family every year growing up went to Narragansett, Rhode Island. So I will always have a special place for Rhode Island, but it's probably Disney World.
I love that. Kindred spirits. I'm a Disney fan myself. More Disneyland now that we've been on the West Coast, but Disney World is great.
I've never made it to Disneyland yet, but hopefully.
Okay, we've got to have like a full D&D podcast with you. We've got to have an attorney podcast with you. We've got to have a Disney podcast with you. Oh my gosh. No, Disneyland. Here, I'm just going to say this for those listening. I've already said it on another conversation, but my analogy is just like if you think of like Christmas morning or even like a birthday or something, there are different elements about a special day that make it good. I always compare it to Christmas because I'm a Christmas family. There's like the glitz of coming down the stairs and there's like a Christmas tree and the lights are on and the presents are wrapped and it's like, ooh, what's today going to be? And it feels like really big and fun. And then there's like Christmas evening where you've opened your presents and you're like playing with the thing or reading your new book and the music's on and it's like calm and cozy and nice. And I feel like that is Disney World and Disneyland. Like it's part of the whole same thing, but they're very different experiences, but they're also both very important because Disneyland's like much smaller, very cozy. So when you go, it welcomes you. I hope you enjoy it. My last one I'll ask is, do you have a favorite item of clothing to wear?
Yeah. I got Birkenstocks this summer.
Ooh. You're a fan?
Yeah, I was really holding out. I was like, I don't know. No, worth it. 100%.
Worth it? Lives up to the hype? I love that. I love that confidence. Awesome. Well, Darienn, it has been so much fun to talk with you today. So cool to get to know you. I'm genuinely glad to know a little more about D&D because it is a world that has been demystified a little bit today by you, and I appreciate that very much, and I hope our listeners do too, especially your really cool integration of sort of your crafting life and your D&D life, especially in relation to your attorney life. You are a multifaceted, very cool person. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. My friends, I hope you enjoyed getting to know Darienn. I think she is such a cool lady and just so interesting, so multifaceted, like the epitome of multifaceted and so confident in who she is and what she's about. I just loved getting to know her. Thank you for listening today and for listening to the Stitch People podcast in general and for enjoying these conversations with Stitch people like you. I would really appreciate it if you haven't already. Please take a moment, subscribe to our podcast wherever you're listening, and leave us a rating and review. It really helps. It helps us to share our podcast more broadly. It helps us shine more cross-stitchy sunshine and friendship and joy into the world. It helps us with the things like algorithms and searching and all that stuff that matters in the podcast land. And unfortunately, that is important. So we'd really appreciate if you just take a moment, subscribe, like, rate, review, all that stuff. You can check out everything that Stitch People has to offer by way of cross-stitch patterns and books, merch, and more. And I'm telling you, there is so much more. I promise if you are looking for a pattern, we probably have it. So give it a search at stitchpeople.com. And also, please connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. We'd love to see what you're up to, see all your works in progress, give you a comment and a like. It's great. We like social media for the good reasons, right? Lastly, I want to thank you all in the Stitch People community for your support of us and your positive and cooperative encouragement of one another. The Stitch People community really is the happiest place on the internet. I'd also like to thank the incredible Stitch People team for making all the magic happen behind the scenes. We have a lot of great people helping us out. And our fully licensed jazzy tunage was created by Jonathan Boyle, and our sound designer, who is just a great person, and I wish you all could know him, is Brandon Yost. Have a wonderful day, my friends, and happy stitching. The Stitch People podcast is a production of Beanski LLC and Stitch People. Copyright 2022, all rights reserved.